Welcome to A Woman's Heart. We have Julie Sunne with us today, and I am looking forward to our conversation. Thanks so much for joining us today, Julie.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Lisa. Love to be here.
Yes, well, I am looking forward to this. I already know you a little bit. We've had the pleasure of meeting at the Speak Up conference, but I would love for everybody else to get to know you a little bit. So tell me a little bit about yourself and something fun that isn't normally in your bio.
I've had quite the journey. I was raised on a farm in Iowa and had five siblings, and my husband and I have raised four children, three boys and a girl. And I suppose one of the things that is interesting about my background is my husband and I spent most of our married life living in state parks. My husband is a
Oh,
park ranger, so we raised our children in state parks. What's kind of interesting is we both have a fish and wildlife biology background.
okay.
But I've only used it just rarely. So I ended up being a teacher, and now I'm a writer. And so who knows? You never know where God might lead you.
Yes, you never know how he puts those pieces together, but that
That's
sounds
right.
wonderful. Growing up in state parks, so you definitely had some beautiful scenery to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Always in Iowa, but Iowa has some beautiful scenery. So if you haven't
Okay.
been to Iowa, come visit.
I have been to Iowa a long time ago for a conference, and that was about the only thing other than driving through. So not a whole lot of experience with Iowa. So
Well, come back.
yes,
I
I
have
would
an extra
love to.
bedroom, Lisa.
Okay. Yes, I love those Airbnbs. Those are my favorites.
That's right.
Those are my favorite. Well, we're here to talk about that and also some more of your life. You are about to release a book, and it is a devotional, and it's called Sometimes I Forget. And you talk about different attributes of God, and I would love to know the story behind the story. So
Yeah.
why did you start to write this devotional, or why did you feel led to do this?
My whole writing kind of came out of a journey of loss and then also blessing.
Mm-hmm.
I experienced five miscarriages throughout
Mm,
my childbearing years, I guess you could say,
yeah.
and we had five live births, so blessing. But within those as well, we had some disability, and my daughter specifically, our only daughter, has lifelong disability. She's got a
Mm-hmm.
lot of intellectual delays, and so she's 20, going to be 26 here soon, but she's kind
Okay.
of she functions on about a 3-year-old level still.
Wow.
So, and her name is Rachel,
Mm-hmm.
and so my son encouraged me to start blogging back in 2011. So I started writing very hesitantly. I did not really want to do that. But yeah, probably a lot of people
Yeah, the
say that
kicking and
same thing.
screaming. Okay, fine.
Yes,
I'll do what you want me to do,
yes,
Lord.
exactly. But it really became something that I started enjoying doing, and I felt
Mm-hmm.
it seemed to be encouraging people. So I continued to do that. Well, as Rachel aged, she did not keep up with her peers, and that became
Mm-hmm.
just a whole raising a child with disabilities, especially to the point where it's so obviously different, and we're struggling to try to find stuff that would help. We didn't have a diagnosis, still don't have a diagnosis for why she's delayed
Wow.
so significantly. And and what really weighs the most as she began to get older into her high school years and even into graduation was her future and what that might look like. And she
Yeah.
still lives at home with us, and
Mm-hmm.
we don't see a different future at this point for her. But what what's going to happen when my husband and I are gone?
Yeah.
And that at times just really hits me. And at this particular time, I was really lamenting to myself that, what, Lord, what's going to happen with her? And I was writing a blog post, and I just started pouring my heart to him. And it was kind of in a prayer where I was sort of reminding myself. In fact, it seems like most of what I write is because I need to hear it, basically. So,
Yes. I
so
understand that.
I just started pouring out, oh, what's going to happen with Rachel? And then it's like, oh, but sometimes I forget, Lord, that you are sovereign and that you
Mm-hmm.
have her life in your hands and that you are in total control. And sometimes I forget that you're loving and you love her far more than I do. And sometimes I forget that you're unchanging and will always be there. And sometimes I forget, so all of I just
Yeah.
started pouring out, and it wasn't super long, but it was the beginning. And so when I was trying to think of a book that would really resonate, that other people needed to hear, that I kept coming back to that and how important it was that we remind ourselves of who God is, because yes, he promises us. And most of us talk as Christians, we talk about his promises
Yes.
and we know his promises, but honestly, until I really started to know the God who made those promises, it was hard to trust some of them for me. It seemed
Hmm.
like they were for everybody else.
Yeah.
And when I looked at that, it was like, but where is the fulfillment of those promises for me? And how can I count on that? Well, I can count on that because once we get to know the God that we serve, then we know that he is trustworthy. He is faithful. And so
Yes.
no matter what it looks like to me or what I might feel in the moment,
Yes.
the truth remains that he is faithful. And those promises are for me and for you,
Hmm.
and that he'll carry through, even if it doesn't look the way that I think maybe it should look.
Yeah, and I think you hit on that part, that sometimes you forget, and
Mhm.
it's so easy to forget when the circumstances around us are not looking like, you raised a lot of questions when you were talking about God is good and
Mhm.
God is
Mhm.
just. And yet sometimes we look at the world, or you may look at your child and you go, okay, what is gonna happen? This
Yeah.
doesn't, you know how do you look at some things that happen in this world and go, oh yeah, God is good? Well, that
Yeah.
situation was horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it was tragic. And how does a good and just God, and then you see people get away, and you
Yeah.
wrestled. I loved how you wrestled with those questions that I think a lot of us
Mhm.
do have. I mean, just
Mhm.
looking at the news or looking at our own circumstances, and we kind of go, how can a good God let that happen? I know I've struggled with
Mhm.
that in certain, to one degree or another at different times in
Absolutely.
different situations. You go, how does a good and just God
Mhm.
let something like this happen or make something like this happen? And you struggle with those, and yet you still come back to, as you said, what the truth of it, because God is truthful
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that. And so can you tell us a little bit more? Because I do love those questions that you brought
Yeah.
up, and that you came back to the truth of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it is it is good to question, and it's okay to
Hmm.
question. And I
Yeah.
think that's the first thing I think we need to establish, that it's okay for Christians to question. In fact, it's good. If you're not questioning, you maybe don't care enough or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
Okay. There's a good
yeah,
perspective.
yeah, I think it's good to question, but what we have to keep coming back to is who this God is. And what I think about when someone asks me about that and the suffering, and how can a good God allow that, we have to remember that this is God.
Yeah.
And if we could really understand God and his reasoning and all of his ways, he really wouldn't be worth serving or worshiping in my mind, because he
Hmm.
wouldn't be much of a God. If
Yeah.
I if my little pea brain can understand what God is doing, then he's not very powerful and not very omniscient, and not, but he is all of those things. And the Bible repeatedly talks to those characteristics of God, those attributes of God, that he is omniscient. He knows things that we can't even think to question, because we don't even know what that
Yeah.
might question. And it
Yeah.
was really interesting as I dove into this book, and I'll have to tell you kind of an interesting, funny little tidbit about the book. I proposed to the publisher 30 attributes of God. They came back and said, "Well, how about 60 attributes?" And my infinite wisdom here says, "Well, 60, that's no problem. Of course I can do 60." You don't know how hard it is to try to understand God until you try to figure
Mhm.
out 60 attributes.
60 different attributes. Yes, you're definitely pulling out the thesaurus.
And it was one of the best deep dives, though, because it really made me dig deep into
Hmm.
what some of these attributes of God means. That his immanence is just as important as his immutability, which his immutability is an unchanging nature. His immanence is his closeness. His transcendence is that he's otherworldly and beyond us. All of
Yes.
those things work in tandem to make a God who's both near to us, but yet far enough away that he is someone we worship, and a being that we can look to for all of our needs. He's never going, he's sinless, he's holy, righteous. So
Mm-hmm.
we never have to question whether his stuff, whether what he allows or the things that he does in our life or the promises he makes or fulfills, that those aren't good, because of he can be not he cannot be anything but good.
Mm-hmm.
That's his nature, and
Yeah.
his kindness, his compassion. We see it when we start really looking at who God is. We can't always see it in our circumstances, and I get
Mm-hmm.
that. And those
Yeah.
circumstances can be incredibly painful and suffering. My circumstances haven't gone away. I have a 26-year-old daughter who is, it functions on about a 3-year-old level. What her future looks like, we have 3 boys who cherish her, and they can live independently and have promised us to take care of them. But that doesn't guarantee
Yeah.
what's going to happen in the future. But I have a guarantee from God that he will be with her. And since he's infinite and omnipresent, he's going to be everywhere. He's never pulled in too many directions. He's
Yeah.
always going to be in the future before we even get there, whatever that means. And we don't have to understand. That's the beauty of it. We don't have to understand God to trust him, because we can understand a little bit about what his character is. And God, and the Bible clearly reveals many things about God. It doesn't reveal all of them. There's mystery there, and that's another attribute. He's mysterious, but that
Mm-hmm.
also can bring us comfort, because that mystery means there's stuff we can't understand. And if I could understand all about this life and it still happened this way, it'd be pretty tragic.
Yeah, yeah, I could. And you've mentioned Rachel several times, and no one would ever wish that their child had these delays and the disabilities. But you also
Mm-hmm.
talk about the blessings
Mm-hmm.
that have come along with that. So could you share some of the blessings that maybe you would have missed out
Mm.
if Rachel had just been born and not had any
Yeah.
delays and been what
Yeah.
other people consider a normal, healthy
Yeah.
child?
Well, I'll begin it with this, the way that my boys had told me a long time ago. I asked the boys, they were still, well, I don't know, quite young. Maybe my oldest was in double digits. And I said, if Rachel was normal, I asked, I said, would you want Rachel to be normal? What do you think? If she would be normally developing, what would you like that? And the boys looked at me and they said, Mom, if Rachel was normal, she'd be a pain.
Spoken like a true brother.
Yeah. And they said she wouldn't be Rachel, she'd just be a pain. And I love that perspective, that she wouldn't be who she is. She wouldn't be who she
Yes.
was created to be.
Mm-hmm.
And, not that she doesn't bother them at times, or didn't when they were growing up. Of course they did. But
Yes.
but they really saw that the blessing she is. And that's what we have to look. Rachel has brought so much, she brings so much joy. She's kind of she likes to joke, even though a lot of times she doesn't really get what she's doing or saying. She's very, very loving. She notices
Mm.
things, to the point where I would say, next to God, she's almost unconditionally loving. She will go up to people who I will cross, and this is confession time. This is sad for me to say,
Uh-oh.
but I might walk the other side of the street to kind of, because this person might look scary, or you know someone I don't want to be around, and she would walk right up to them and hug them. She
Mm.
doesn't care what their past is. She doesn't care what they're doing. None of
Yeah.
that. She just loves them. And it's such a beautiful thing to witness, and so convicting, honestly. Uh,
Yeah.
she notices the little things and appreciates the little things, the raindrops, when the sun peeks out, when the moon, she loves seeing the moon, the things that we often take for granted, she
Mm-hmm.
notices. The compassion, the empathy that she's developed in me, my faith. I would not be the person I am today without Rachel in our lives. I can guarantee
Mm.
that. She's just
Yeah.
she's a beautiful tool in God's hands, honestly.
Yeah. To kind of chisel away maybe some of that other
Mm-hmm.
stuff that God said, yeah, you don't need this.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's beautiful because it is challenging, but I love that you're able to look at all of the blessings that have come about. And sometimes you look at people like Rachel, and they just have, it's like they don't have a care in the world. They can just enjoy
Yeah.
it and be joyful. And you're like,
Yeah.
so who's really better off here? Because I'm like staying up at night churning over all this other stuff, and they're just peacefully sleeping away.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
sometimes
Exactly.
you
And
go,
even through,
maybe they got the right idea.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And you see it, even the people that she brought me around the Special Olympics, I, you see it in the way they all just rejoice in what they can do, where we're like,
Yeah.
you brought up perfection before we got on the air, and
Yes.
we're so consumed with perfection and getting everything just right, and we can't celebrate until it's a completely accomplished, or we do the perfect thing, we score the goal we needed to, or
Yeah.
whatever. Rachel and her peers, her Special Olympic peers, they rejoice when they just kick the ball. They rejoice just to be in front of people, just to
Yeah.
be celebrating who they are. It's just beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful to see.
Yeah, I mentioned that was the Michael J. quote you put
Yeah.
on the devotion that said,
Yeah.
God is perfect. And the quote you used was, I am careful not to confuse excellence with perfection. And
Mm-hmm.
excellence I can reach for. Perfection is God's business.
Yeah.
And I read that. I was like, oh, I think I need to highlight this one because she is stepping on my toes. I am a recovering perfectionist. And definitely there is a difference between that striving for excellence or striving for perfection, because perfection is just not attainable. It's never will be. And yet we still try. And
Yeah.
it's just kind of crazy, but yet God is perfect, and we can keep reaching for that and trust him in that.
And that's another whole reason we can trust him, because he is perfect. He's
Mm-hmm.
not going to make a mistake. I mean, we make
Yeah.
mistakes right and left, but he never will. And that's so that's why so often you hear Christians quote, we walk by faith, not by sight, because
Mm-hmm.
we can't
Yeah.
see it. Some of it is just impossible for us to understand it. Like I said before, you cannot understand. You can't even know the questions to ask, because you can't understand, because you don't know. You haven't seen the future. You
Mm-hmm.
haven't seen, 1,000 years in the past.
Yeah.
God knows it all.
Yeah.
And
And you don't
it's
know all the backstory behind the cashier's
no,
day.
right. Right. Yeah, just those little things, whenever someone is is not behaving, or they're acting in a
Mm-hmm.
way that you don't think there's something going on.
Yeah.
Bullies, there's always something in their life that causes them to act that way.
Yeah.
That doesn't make it right or even excuse it, but there is something going on in everybody's life.
Yeah.
And so we need an anchor, and the only anchor that's never going to fail us, that's always going to be there, because he's unchanging. He's not going to become different in 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, or 1,000 years, or what, infinity. He's always going to be the same. So that's our one anchor that we have. And it's really, it's a beautiful way to discover a peace and a joy that goes far deeper than circumstances. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
it's not to say that I never have tears. Oh my, you read my book. Yeah. Lots of tears.
Yes, you did.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've seen
Lots
them.
of tears, lots of mistakes, lots of missteps, lots of concern. But deep down, when I really sit with God, I know I'm going to be okay. Rachel's going to be okay,
Yeah.
because God has it all. He's not caught by surprise. He's not, oh, what happened?
I didn't
No,
think about that.
I didn't think about that. No, he knows it, and and he's got it planned. And so we can rest in that. We don't always have to like it either. That's another thing. We don't have to like it.
No, well, that's
And
good, because I don't always like them.
we
I'll
won't
be
always like it.
honest. I don't
We
always
won't
like
always
it.
like it. That's right. That's right. But then that helps us celebrate the things we do like more,
Yes.
and notice those blessings.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll think about when I'm sick. It's like, I hate being sick, but I'm so much more appreciative when I'm healthy then.
This is
Or
true.
look at the spring. When the spring comes,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of
Oh,
us, I like
yeah.
winter, so I'm different, but a lot of us don't like winter, and so they still
There's
look
some
forward to
parts of
spring.
winter, fires and cozying up, and I have
Yes,
some nice sweaters. There's some things about
that's
winter.
right.
There's something about every season, but yeah, that
That's right.
springtime when the trees, I drove down and the trees have popped in one part,
Yes.
and then the daffodils are blooming in one section of
Yes.
town, and there's just that, oh, that's beautiful and all that. Now,
Yeah.
I know you mentioned really, diving in and looking at all of these different attributes of God
Mhm.
really worked on you.
Yeah.
Were
Oh,
there
yeah.
some that kind of, for whatever reason, I know there's 60 of them, we can't talk about
Yeah.
all of them, you've
No.
mentioned several,
Yeah.
but I'm curious as to, I know for me, some of the ones that have stood out for me is I like God is creative. I mentioned the
Yeah.
flowers, and I look at the animals, and I look
Yeah.
at nature and people, and I love that God is creative. That was one of
Yeah.
the ones that I went, oh, I like this one, and
Yeah.
that he's the light.
Hmm.
And there's so many different things about God that I kind of went, that one, I was like, oh yeah, 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 yeah. And then, oh, wait a minute. Every now and again, one we kind of go, oh, oh, which
Yeah.
one, what were some of those qualities for you that kind of went,
Yeah.
oh, I mean, yeah, they're all great. They're
Yeah.
all great. So, but which
Yeah.
one of them kind of sparked a little more
Um,
for you?
yeah, it's a little bit difficult to grab onto, but one of them that I really like is that he's victor. He's the victor, and he has
Okay.
victory
Yes.
over all of, and that's something when you're in the midst, especially if you're, I think if you're in more of a kind of even like a spiritual battle, or
Mm-hmm.
you have relationship issues, I think that's a good one to hold on to,
Yeah.
that he does win, or if you're in a health, really, I know a friend of mine is in just some horrendous health battles, but
Mm.
God does win, whether
Yeah.
the healing is on this, on earth here, or it's in heaven. He does win. He has defeated death. So death is an enemy, but death does not win. So
Yes.
because yes, for a Christian, even when we die, we live forever. So
Mm-hmm.
so that one I think is especially welcoming. And one that's kind of interesting, I don't talk a lot about, but even his wrath, his righteousness, his holiness, they kind of all go together, in his justness, they kind of all
Yeah.
go, well, they all do go together anyway,
Yeah. They will. Yeah. They
but
all come together. It's a total
yeah,
package. But
yeah. But to think about how when we're wronged,
mm-hmm.
that is, there is an answer for that, and it doesn't have to come from us. It
Mm.
God
Yeah.
God God is holy and righteous and just and wrathful. He holds all of that. And the beauty of his wrath is that for Christians, we don't face it anymore. He's taken that wrath, and
Yes.
Jesus has taken that wrath for us. So as Christians, we don't have to be concerned with that. But when we look at the evil in the world, God is still working, and his wrath is still very evident and very there, and that evil does not win.
Yeah.
And so even his wrath can be looked at in in a beautiful light, in a
Mm-hmm.
hopeful light as well.
Yeah.
So those are a couple, his transcendence. One of them that I guess I hold on to and probably refer to the most is his immutability, which is his unchangeability.
Yeah.
I love that one because
Yeah.
that just kind of, to me, it almost like holds them all together, because none of them change then, because he doesn't
Yeah.
change.
Yeah, yeah. And I had mentioned, yeah, I'd heard you mention the unchanging or the
Mm-hmm.
unchangeability of God.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, when is she going to say that one? Because she's mentioned that one already. It's a couple
Yes,
of times.
yes.
So that one's obviously, yeah.
His transcendence is wonderful because it goes far beyond anything. It's very
Mm-hmm.
otherworldly. It's far beyond
Yeah.
what we can imagine. But then you pull back to his immanence, not eminence, but immanence with an I,
Mm-hmm.
and that means he's near to us. So
Yeah.
he's both far and near, which is another really neat aspect.
Yeah. I don't remember thinking that I'd seen the Jehovah Shema. Is that how you, I don't know if
Yeah,
that's how you
yeah.
pronounce
I'm
it.
not even sure. Yeah,
Yeah, I'll just say it's
that sounds
Jehovah
right.
Shema, and
Sounds
but
good.
that Jehovah is there. I've heard of several
Yeah,
other versions, but I was like, I don't think I'd come across this one, but I like that one
yeah.
because you mentioned, him being near to us, but
Mm-hmm.
yet far enough away that we can still worship him.
Yeah,
And that one kind of stood out to me as
yeah.
as far as one of those things. And I also loved, I think it was under God is light. You talked about with your glasses
Oh
and
yeah.
how we can talk about all these attributes of God and how wonderful it is and everything else, but until we actually take it in and start using it, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really do us a whole lot of good. Like
Mm-hmm.
believing that Jesus is there. Well, even the demons
Yeah,
believed Jesus was the Son of God, but
yeah.
they weren't going to follow him.
Right.
So just
Right.
believing or knowing he's there or having a Bible doesn't do it unless we open it
Yeah.
and read it. So
Yeah.
can you talk to us about that for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely. God's light is very illuminating in more ways than one.
Mm-hmm.
It illuminates our sin, but it also illuminates a path.
Yeah.
And in that particular devotion, I was talking about my glasses when I was in, I think it was sixth grade.
Sixth grade.
I ended up getting glasses, and I still have glasses, and if I take them off, it doesn't do me a whole lot of good. I actually have to
No.
put them on, and that's exactly what you're referring to. That we have to. That's where I talk a lot about when we know God. And that's what this book has done for me too. Just did the research for the book has done for me, is
Mm-hmm.
it's opened up so much more illumination about who God is.
Yeah.
And 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 that has grown my faith and helped me trust him even more when those sudden unexpected things or those long-term never-ending battles we have, when those continue and we don't see an ending. When we can know God more, we can trust him better, we can trust him more deeply. And that's that goes back to that whole light, that whole, when we open our Bible, we get to, that's how we get to know him. And faith comes by hearing. So when we go into church and we hear the word
Yeah.
spoken, and a biblically a biblical message true to the word, those things really work in us to show us more of who God is, what his character is, so that God didn't put the things in the Bible by accident. They're there because it's enough. And we don't know
Yeah.
everything. I've
Mm-hmm.
been watching, it's not a plug for it, but I've been watching parts of The Chosen, and really enjoying that. And they flesh out the stories of,
Yeah. I like
it's
that.
extra biblical where they flesh out the
Mm-hmm.
stories. Now we don't know, that
Yeah. We
Peter
don't know if
acted
that's how
like
it
they
happened,
show
but
in the show. It's a show,
yeah.
but at the same time, um, the things that are in the Bible is exactly enough. It's exactly
Mm-hmm.
what we need to illuminate enough of God so our faith can grow and we can trust in him. He's provided enough for us there. He's not provided necessarily everything we want. I would love to have had some of the backstories of some of the people in
Yes.
the Bible, but it's enough for our situations. It's enough for our life.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Well, as we start to wrap up, what would you say to encourage someone to pursue that passion that God has placed in their hearts?
Yeah. The first thing I would say is check your heart.
Okay.
Honestly, check
Mm-hmm.
your heart and make sure that your heart's desires is in line with the Bible, with the truth of the Bible, with what Scripture tells us and what God reveals to us. Because God does not mince words. Our heart can be very
Mm-hmm.
deceitful, and in fact, the most deceitful, if we're not in the Word, and we're not basing our lives biblically and on the Lord and letting him lead us. So once, if you can check your heart and make sure that what you're doing is in line with Scripture and what God would seems to want for your life,
Mm-hmm.
then I would say, pray about it and follow it one step at a time, and be willing. In my pursuit of this authorship, I guess you would say, this author journey, this writing journey,
Yes.
there was
Mm-hmm.
times I really was not in check with God. I was not in step with God. And I thought I was, it was what I
It all
wanted.
looked
So
good.
it all looked good. But I was getting a feeling of just not comfortable with that, and
Mm-hmm.
just becoming anxious about it. And when I really thought about it and prayed about it, I was running way ahead of where God wanted me at that time. And
Okay.
so I really kind of took a step back from that, and had to check my spirit again and just let him lead me. So, and there's so many different aspects of where that desire of your heart may go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You may think you're going to become the next, I don't know, Ann Voskamp or whatever, but
I have no
but
aspirations for that.
yeah, but God may have you equally important
Mm-hmm.
serving those 100 people that
Yeah.
have subscribed to your blogs or that follow you on social media that are
Mm-hmm.
equally important. I was
Yeah.
just talking with a gentleman about this who he was talking about just the numbers and how writers get really caught up in numbers. And I think
Yeah.
we all can. It's that accolade, it's that perfection,
Mm-hmm.
maybe that desire
Yep.
for perfection and
Yep.
the pursuit of that
Mm-hmm.
and how as Christians we really need to continue to watch that we're not getting caught up into that, into what looks
Yeah.
good but
Mm-hmm.
maybe necessarily isn't, that we're driven by something that's not God led, I
Yes,
guess is what
yes,
I would say.
absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
Julie, if somebody wants to connect with them with you, what's the best
Yeah.
way for them to connect with you?
Yeah. Well, you can find me pretty much all over the social media sites. But what I'd really direct you is one place in particular is juliesunne.com, my website, Julie
Okay.
Sunne, and that's SUNNE.com.
Okay.
You can find all of I blog there. You can find all of my social media connections there too, if you want to. You can subscribe and you'll get some freebies and you'll get a message from me mostly every month. I'm trying to be better about that, but I am not
Yes.
perfect.
Yes, there
I'm
we go.
pursuing
We're all trying
excellence,
to
not
grow. We're all
perfection.
trying to grow. Yeah, no, that's great. Well, Julie, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's just
Yes.
been a pleasure. Thanks, Lisa.
You're
God bless
welcome.
you and everybody out there.